Welcome to episode 4 of Drink Local. We're here at Coachella Valley Brewery Company, and I'm Benjamin Eglin, better known as Jamin, at the studio. I'm here next beside me is Peter Ahern. He is the founding brewmaster for Ballast Point in San Diego. And then right behind us is Chris with Coachella Valley Brewing Company. He is the brewmaster here. And I'll turn it over to you two to let you talk a little bit about a white IPA that we have in front of us.
All right, yeah, so Chris just poured us the white IPA, which is a Belgian-style wheat blended with IPA style. So let's go ahead and give this a taste. Definitely getting kind of the West Coast hopping there. And,
yeah, definitely.
And kind of maybe, it's a little hard to tell. Is that citrus peel? Is that the
yeah, there's kumquats in there, so you're getting a little bit of that. You're definitely getting some grapefruit from the hops that we used. So kind of a nice little marriage of citrus fruit in the nose.
Big citrus bomb up front. Yeah. Nice kind of hazy pale yellow color like you'd expect from a wit.
Sure.
And then
yeah, this one's unfiltered, so it does have a little bit of a haze to it. Brewed with a really high proponent of unmalted wheat, which is something that typically you wouldn't find in a wheat beer brewed on a mash slaughter tun system. Since we're not using that type of a system, we can get away with using higher amounts of grains that typically wouldn't lauter, like rye and spelt and of course wheat.
Yeah, a couple episodes ago we were over at Schmitty's and we were trying the Desert Swarm, and Craig, was it the Cimarron?
Oh,
Justin was, he said 70% raw wheat. And wow, 70% raw wheat. I'm just imagining this gluey, impossibly stuck mash that, mash in, convert, and now you just have a big pile of glue and can't do anything with it. So I'm really excited to go back into the brewery a little later and see the system that brewed this beer.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's all about local ingredients in this beer. Coriander and kumquat come from literally 30 minutes away from here. Over in the East Valley, we have good relationships developed with farmers and one of the spice distributors that actually distributes to McCormick's. They're a real big spice grower and distributor. So we linked up with them straight out the gate. Golden State, a lot of flies. Golden State Herb Company, as well as Seaview Packing out in the East Valley. They've been really stellar in terms of getting us the citrus we need. They're the largest kumquat grower in the nation. So Dave and I thought, who better to link up with than these guys,
Yeah, I mean, sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
I just was going to interject here. It has a very much of a honey color to it, and I don't know, am I crazy that I taste a little bit of...
You probably taste a little bit of the residual honey, yeah. I mean, there's 140 pounds of honey in a 34-barrel batch, so that's quite a bit of honey. But it does ferment out a little bit, so for us, Ryan and myself, we kind of perceive it as kind of a touch of sweet, a little bit of cinnamon we get from the honey, but most of it ferments out and adds to the alcohol. This one is pretty hoppy. It's around 70 IBUs and a little over 7% alcohol by volume. And it doesn't drink like that. It's kind of my go-to beer. Most days when I get off, this is the beer I kind of gravitate to because I like hops and I like the complexity of it with the coriander and the kumquat and how it marries together.
Yeah, it's got a nice dry quenching finish there at the end. Lingers with you, but
excuse my ignorance, but when you say 70 IBUs, that would be
international bittering units. It's kind of a description of the level of hops in a beer. 70 IBUs is pretty high, fairly bitter beer.
And is that on a scale of 100? Is that typically how it's...
No, it can go...
It can go higher, but it's usually once it gets above 100, it's kind of a speculative rating once it gets above 100, because your palate can really only has a threshold, and then you can't really taste bitterness beyond certain levels.
Kind of. I might have seen beers with 120 IBUs, but above a certain, it's just real bitter, and then it's almost more about the other ingredients in the beer. Absolutely. And how they play off of it rather than the IBUs is that's something measurable.
Yep.
But in terms of how you taste it, really depends on what else is going on in the beer. Yeah.
And this mash system that you have.
Sure.
how many are in the country that use this type of
There's
system?
9 in existence right now on the planet. There's other mash filtration systems made by other manufacturers, but this, as far as IDD Hebs, which is the one we employ, there's 9 in existence. A couple of those are in production right now. A couple of them are on the southern hemisphere. Some are here in the States, obviously. But yeah, it's just very, very new technology for the craft brewer. It's been around since the 70s for like the Bud Miller and Coors were using mash filtration technology a long time ago because of the level of efficiency you can get from your mash, as well as how quick you can turn a beer on a brew day. So it's not necessarily new technology, but nobody ever really scaled it down to kind of a craft or a micro scale since prior to Jeff and his team at IDD did this.
Am I wrong thinking was Coors the first big brewery that
They
was
were.
all? Yeah,
Yep.
right. And I remember seeing the Coors plant way back with like, what is that thing?
Yeah,
That's not a mash tun.
Bigger than this building.
Yeah, oh yeah. Absolutely, just a warehouse-sized
Sure.
mash filtration system up there in Golden, Colorado.
So you said that you're able to turn it faster. Is that?
Yeah, typically on a mash lauter tun system, even like the one at Ballast Point, their brew days are probably 5 to
6 hours.
5 to 6 hours, where ours are 2 hours. So, as far as that's concerned, this whole industry is very, very slave to the grind. I can't tell you how many of my brothers in the industry have been divorced because they were spending more time at the brewery than they were with their wife or their kids. So, just to have that alleviate some of that stress on your brew day to be able to get yourself down to a 2-hour brew day. It doesn't change anything on the cellar side of moving the beer from vessel to vessel and transferring it, but it does shorten up your brew day, which is very nice. And the efficiency is something that pays us a return on our investment every time we brew on that system, which you can't really claim from a mash lauter tun system. So that part of it was a no-brainer for Dave and myself when we were looking at kind of what this thing would continually pay us over time. We've gotten upwards of 98% efficiency off of a system, meaning for every 10 pounds of grain we're actually utilizing 9.8 pounds, and 0.2 pounds is the product that's going off to our cattle feed producer that we give our grain to. So, it's pretty darn good.
That's pretty impressive.
Pretty efficient.
Yeah.
Now, and then also though, correct me if I'm wrong, but some of the remains that you might have after a brewing process, you also then use to kind of recycle or reuse it in production of
Sure.
I think it was at the Bavarian pretzels or something.
Yeah,
like that, right?
we basically not a drop of the spent grain goes into the landfill, which is real important to us. We have a soap maker that's making some soaps that we sell here in our tasting room with it. We have the spent grain pretzels. We do spent grain bread as well with it for a couple different restaurants around town. And then the biggest thing is we actually have a company that buys our spent grain from us, because the system squeezes and produces such a dry spent grain cake. It's very, very desirable because its level of spoilage is very low. It doesn't go sour as fast as a wet grain mash would. Mm-hmm. So we have a company called Imperial Western Products that comes and actually buys the spent grain from us at a certain dollar amount per ton, which is pretty cool. And annually for the first year, we're probably looking at about $10,000 that we get paid back on this product that would essentially be something going into landfill. So that's pretty cool.
And is that a cattle feed?
Yeah, they're using it for cattle feed. Yeah. Still has a high protein.
Yeah, it has high protein. Well, you hopefully that's not going in the beer.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't want that good of an extraction.
No, not at all.
So, well, hey, cheers. And
Cheers.
Are we going to go back now and
let's
take a look
let's
at
go check out the Hebs.
Awesome. This should be exciting, guys. So, Chris, I'm blown away. 2-hour brew. Walk me through it. Show me how you guys put together an amazing craft beer in 2 hours.
So first and foremost, it starts out with RO2 and filtered water. We reverse osmosis and filter every drop of water that goes into every brew, and we create a water profile right here on this platform for each one of the beers that we offer. Just something kind of unique for us to be able to produce true to style beers. We feel like it's important. This vessel here is called a hot liquor tank. Basically a glorified term brewers use to describe a tank that heats up water, or hot water tank. It's jacketed, so it has a steam jacket that runs on the outside, and then on the inside it has a steam coil, a little bit different than your typical brew house has in that respects, because it allows us to heat from the inside and from the outside at the same time. It'll allow us to take this vessel, which is a little over 1,100 gallons, from ambient temperature, which is 70 degrees right now, up to strike temperature in about 30 minutes, which is really, really fast. a lot less lag time from the time we walk in the door to when we can actually brew. So once we have our hot water ready, over in the mill room on the other side of the brew house, we'll have our grain that's been crushed. We bring that over here and introduce the two together in this vessel behind me called a mash vessel. We don't call it a mash tun, we call it a mash vessel because it doesn't have a screen in it. It's actually just a holding tank essentially for the mashing process.
You're just making a slurry in there.
Just making a slurry with this guy here called a grist hydrator, which allows the water and the grain to be mixed evenly so we don't get any kind of hot, dry pockets of grain and uneven stirring of the mash. So once the product starts to get incorporated together, it'll mix around and sit for about an hour at a set temperature. Generally for most of our beers in between 148 and 158 degrees, depending on what kind of style we're trying to make. During that time, enzymatic action called saccharification occurs, which is just a starch conversion, or the starch turning themselves over to sugar. Once that process is complete, we can then begin to strip the mash from its liquid, and we do so via this vessel in front of us called our mash filter. Each one of these guys links together. It's actually spanned out right now, but it'd be hydraulically pressed together at about 4,000 psi. As the mash kind of loads up, it loads up kind of like the old Connect 4 game you used to play as a kid, from the top to bottom. And as it stacks in there and we get it all full, we then run a bit of water through it to rinse the sugars from the grain. And every third press here has every third plate has a bladder, or a giant kind of water balloon that allows us to put a giant squeeze on the actual grain via water pressure. So we increase the water pressure and do it pneumatically with a diaphragm pump, and that squeezing action at 4,000 psi squeezes just about every bit of water out of the mash filter and produces a super dry cake. That also means that we don't have to sparge or rinse the grain or do the process called mash out. So we've already eliminated a good hour and a half of time that's involved in normal mash lauter tun brewing. And doing so, we've done it with 60% less water, because that water is not being left behind inside of this grain cake that comes out of here. One of the coolest parts about this is once we get done, we basically open it up like it is right now. There's a conveyor belt underneath it that we turn on. Grain falls onto the conveyor belt, and it goes off into one of those totes and off to our farmer. So there's no physical shoveling like I've had to do at some of my previous brewing jobs, which is not the funnest job.
Lots of that, raking out the mash tun.
Raking and shoveling, no fun. Not a fun job at all.
So what now? I see some of these are labeled sessions, call show. Is that like the
Those
level
are the
that
spans for the different grain bills.
Okay.
Sessions is one of our lightest beers at 4.3%. So
Kolsch's here, and as
Kolsch's
you're getting a bit
here,
higher
you'll
alcohol beers,
you'll see Swarm and Monumentus at the end here. And, some of the bigger beers. Most we've ever ran through this filter is around 1,500 pounds, and that was for our Imperial Wet Hop IPA that we brew annually. And it was really pushing the envelope of what this thing can do the day that we brewed that beer. But the beer turned out absolutely incredible. So we'll definitely be coming back to the Hebs and asking her to do it again next year once the hop harvest comes around for Coriolis #2.
So how does it pumps in through right here? I take it and comes in at the top through the top pipe.
These are the inlets, and it comes in through this pipe over here.
Comes in over here.
And then this one actually allows it to return and then wash through the grain. The other two valves on the bottom allow it to come off of there, and then it starts to appear over in this vessel here called a wort clarity grant. This is our first look at what our wort is going to look like, what the gravity is going to be, and essentially what the sugar content of that product first running is.
You cycle it back through if it's not coming out clear enough?
We can if we want to, but we've never had to do that before.
Never had to do that. What about cleaning it? So you said the grain drops out, but you also probably have to hose it down?
Yeah, I mean, in between batches, if we're doing back-to-backs, we seldom rinse it off.
Okay.
But once everything's said and done at the end of the brew, we basically open the top valves, close the bottom valves, we run hot liquor into it, and let it hold it so where we kind of can. Then we wash it out, and then this has an oxine doser, which is a product called chlorine dioxide.
Okay.
And we actually sanitize it with that after each use.
Otherwise, it would start getting pretty funky.
Yeah, it gets kind of stinky if you weren't to do that.
Lots of things live to work on worts. Wort's just nice food for just about any little bug that wants it.
Yep.
Yeah.
The flies, everything love it.
What's the material in that? This is the actual filtration material.
It's a this is a we have some 10 and some 30s, but it's a nylon material.
10 and 30 is the micron size.
The micron
okay,
size.
Got it.
The old filters that we've been playing around. We're actually right now the demo plant for the West Coast for the manufacturer of this system called MicroPure. So they've been using us as guinea pigs, and we're playing around. And actually, we have designed a sheet now that we feel like is probably the best one that we've come up with yet. It's double reinforced, and it's a much tighter sheet. If you look at this material versus this material, you can see that it's going to filter out a lot more material.
It's a lot thicker.
A lot thicker, a lot beefier, a lot easier to rinse too. So.
Got it. Yeah, I would think so, huh?
And then once we put the press on or the squeeze on,
right,
the wort will start to show up here, and then we move it over to our boil kettle, where we can begin the boil process and add the hops. In the case of this beer, we also add coriander and honey as well to the boil kettle during the brew. This beer gets a lot of hops, so essentially this beer between all the additions. It's a lot going on with this beer. It's not the funnest brew day just because there's so many different additions. But we do have a software program that kind of reminds us, hey, it's time to add this. Hey, it's time to add that, which is really cool. During the boiling process, the proteins are starting to kind of coagulate or bind together, and this product kind of looks something like egg drop soup if you've ever been to a Chinese food restaurant after about an hour. And we want to be able to separate that solid material from what brewers call WORT or wort. And the way we do that is to transfer it over to the next vessel here, which is called our whirlpool.
And that solid material is a lot of the proteins that come out of the beer, but also a lot of hops.
Yep, hop break, everything.
The stuff, everything that kind of congeals together. Yeah.
We had a product called carrageenan, or some people call it Irish moss, and that actually inhibits the binding process or the coagulation process of all those hop break materials to kind of group together and drop out of that liquid.
And that's actually a seaweed.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's an algae that helps to just get all that protein to glue up and fall out to the bottom.
So then we transfer it over here to our whirlpool vessel, and we do so in a centrifugal fashion. That spinning force actually drives all the solid matter to the center. And if you want to get a look inside this tank here, there's a big stainless steel wall that allows for that solid material, that break material, to sit in the center and not be pulled off and essentially ran off to our fermenter. So after about 15 minutes of spinning and a short amount of time for rest, we then have to get this product cooled down so that it wouldn't kill the yeast. The yeast couldn't ferment a beer at 200-something degrees. It would die on contact. So we use a heat exchanger, which is brewers' closest thing brewers have to kind of like a radiator in your car. It's cooling down the wort. One pass through with a product called propylene glycol and cold water on one side, and the wort runs on the opposite side. Gets a little dose of yeast and oxygen, and off to the fermenter it goes, where the fermentation process will continue for most of our beers for about 2 weeks. And that's the beginnings of beer making in our brew house for sure.
So Chris, let me ask you a follow-up to a question I asked earlier, which was you had said that you got about 98% efficiency out of the grain, only 2%. You don't mean out of the total weight of the grain. You have what, probably about 30% of the total weight of the grain left over?
Out of the mash, we're talking about mash efficiency and not total efficiency.
Got it.
So our mash efficiency on the system is anywhere from 95 to 98%.
Okay.
That's just on the total grain bill.
So that's of the potential starch that's in the mash.
Exactly.
Got it. And so out of the raw wheat that you're saying, and the reason you're able to do a raw wheat, like we said, a typical mash tun, there's a screen at the bottom.
Sure.
And we got to run everything through there, and it would just solidify to glue, and you wouldn't be able to run it through your screen. It would just seize up. So this allows you, you're mixing everything in there, you're pumping it through, and then this allows you to basically dry out that wheat, get all the liquid out of that.
Squeeze all the liquid out of it.
Squeeze all the liquid out
regardless of how gelatinous it is or not.
Right. So you can do some pretty crazy stuff on the system.
We've done some stuff with spelt and some crazy rye mashes, and continue to push the envelope of this thing. We run kumquats through it, dates through it. I don't know. We've done a lot of different stuff with it. So
now Jamin was asking me at our last episode down at Fame about gluten-free beer. Now,
Sure.
have you thought about running a sorghum mash on this?
Yeah, we're talking about doing something with sorghum, rice, and quinoa for our gluten-free people. It's probably going to be a Belgian beer. Okay. One kind of challenge that Ryan and I have made for ourselves is to brew a gluten-free beer that tastes good. There's a lot of really bad ones out there, and we're kind of excited to take that challenge and run with it. Typically, with all those grains, we got to use an enzyme, just like we do with our wheat beers, to kind of get the conversion going on. So that's nothing new to how we run the system. So yeah, we're excited to take the challenge, and you can probably look for that sometime in 2014. I'm working right now with a guy on the East Coast that has a ton of sorghum, so I'm sure it'll happen. It's just a matter of figuring out a formulation. And
like I said, it's going to taste good.
yeah, it's going to taste good.
And so when you do that, I mean, obviously, are you going to go ahead and do a big batch like this, or is there?
We would pilot it first on our little system. Pretty much, out of all the beers we make here, some 30 odd beers, we've never produced a single beer other than one beer without piloting it. And Volstead was the one beer, which is our classic American Pils. We kind of made it on a whim and decided we were going to do a beer to commemorate the repeal of Prohibition. Right. We brewed the beer, and it's now become our in between our second and third best-selling beer. And we never piloted it. We actually hand wrote the recipe without any kind of computer software or anything. So it's very, very seldom that you have a situation like that. But that was one. But this one that beer would definitely get piloted or brewed on a little system before we invested the farm into it and brewed it on the Hebs.
How big is your pilot system?
We can yield about a barrel and a half.
About a barrel and a half. Okay, that's
about 45 gallons.
Yeah.
And when you brew on this side here, one batch, how much is produced?
One batch is 17 barrels, but since we've been open, we anticipated on not doing a single double batch or back-to-back brew in 2013. But after our second month of operation, we couldn't keep up, and now we're pretty much double brewing every beer that we put in
Hey, that's a good problem to have.
It's a good problem to have. Yeah.
So now, what do we've got here? These look similar to those over there, but what's going on in this process over here?
These are the fermentation vessels. So after the wort has been produced, the yeast has been added and aerated properly. The fermentation process begins. You get over here, you can actually see the CO2 blowing off. We have just an airlock bucket in here that kind of keeps from anything else passing back into the tank. And then this fermentation process will continue generally for most of our beers for about 2 weeks, which includes a time for a diacetyl rest, which is a flavor component that we typically try and get to ferment out because we don't want that flavor in our beer. It kind of resembles like artificial butter flavoring, which is not real pleasant. In certain styles, it's acceptable, but
a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Not in most of our beers. We don't use a lot of high diacetyl producing yeast either, so we don't really have a lot of issues with that. We manage 5 yeasts, 3 wild yeasts, and 6 bacteria here, which is a painstaking effort for a small brewery like this, but allows us to brew a lot of different styles. So essentially, during this process, the alcohol is being created via the fermentation process, and CO2 is being bled off or burped off from this product.
Alrighty, so we've gone and we've seen the fermentation tank. Now, what's the next step that we've got?
So we've once the fermentation process is completed, there we harvest the yeast, pull that off, and save it for a subsequent batch, and then we pull the clear beer off via a racking cane inside of that cone type complex there, and bring it over here to the final stop in its voyage, which is called our bright beer tank or conditioning tank.
And you go through a filter on the way?
We don't filter
any of your beers.
No,
okay.
No, we don't. We prefer not to use filtration here.
Got it.
We filtered one beer since we've been in operation, and we use a clarifying agent. But I'm not a fan of filtration. Maybe because of my home brewing days, I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, but when I worked in the industry, I did not like what it stripped out of beers, especially hoppy beers.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of shows that, eventually we probably will have to do that, but at this time being so small, I really wanted to focus on bringing our flavors to the glass full circle without having, a filter strip some of that. But so this is where we introduce CO2 and put those tight little bubbles inside the beer. We do so forced. We don't naturally carbonate any of our beers. We actually introduce CO2 from a tank, push it in, and that trickles into this body of liquid over the course of about a day. And then once that process is complete, we then can package the beer in kegs or bottles. We do 2 formats of kegs, 2 formats of bottles, depending on the beer, and it's pretty much it. At this point, the beer is kept cold, and we really want to really make sure that the beer stays cold from that point on. So we're real key on making sure that the beer is delivered cold and stored cold on delivery. We've had a couple accounts that wanted to store our beer out warm, where we just told them, either you're not going to be able to do that, or we just flat out, won't deliver it to you.
Especially here.
Yeah, I mean, in the desert, it can ruin a beer. We've had beers
Fast.
especially with our Belgian beers, the yeasts are really nutty, and they can overcarbonate a beer in a heartbeat. So we really didn't want that to happen. So a couple of the accounts, we've had to make special deliveries for them on off days. But that's how key we are on making sure that you get the same quality here at the brewery that you would at one of our accounts, which is very important to us.
Now, beginning to end process. So when we started over there, time-wise to get to here, how long are we talking about?
Our quickest turning beer, which is our flagship, is our Kolsch, and we can have it completely fermented and packaged within about 15 to 18 days, depending on how it rolls.
So, and is there a process where once you've started to come down the line, then you can start on another one right behind it, or do you have to wait till it's already? As
soon as a fermenter is cleared out, we can refill it. So basically, right now, every fermenter in this brew house is full until Thursday, when we will transfer 2 of those beers over here to these vessels, and then we can have 2 more spots to brew 2 more beers, and we already have those penciled in the schedule to brew. I don't see any end to us being at full capacity, at least through the rest of our season here in the desert, which will take us right into probably May, which is a good problem to have, but it's also kind of stressful because in a small brewery like this, there's a lot of Tetris going on, trying to fit pieces in.
Yeah, right.
Well, now you also do bottling here too.
We do.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So is that going to be part of the? Do we get to? Is that not for the camera's eyes?
No, you can see. Right now we're just applying labels, but you guys can check that out.
And you guys are starting with 22s.
Yeah, we're doing the bombers, the big format.
That's how most people start.
Yeah, it's the best way. Eventually, we'll get into 12-ounce bottles, but that's a ways down the line.
And I know we'd talked earlier about this. So this is where you interject the CO2, but as we talked about on a previous episode, the whole nitro thing,
Sure.
Is that now something that's in the works for you?
Yeah, for
down
sure.
the road?
Yeah, once we start doing right now, we really haven't brewed that many dark beers just because we opened in the peak of summer. A big dark heavy stout or porter probably would not have sold real well to the customers. But now that it's cooler, people are certainly coming in and asking for those types of beers. We are going to be brewing a robust porter for the gentleman that won the Props and Hops homebrew competition. So you'll probably see that beer first on nitro, and then our Black Widow Russian Imperial Bourbon Barrel Aged Russian Imperial Stout will be on nitro next. Be one of our 14, 15 taps out there in the tasting room.
So now we've moved over to the last bit of the process, which is bottling, packaging. Can we go ahead and explain what we've got going on here?
So yeah, Chris here is applying labels to Monumentus IPA, which is going to be one of our first bottle runs released. This is our state-of-the-art piece of equipment here. It's a hand application labeler. We're a startup brewery, so we put our money in a lot of other places other than this little piece of equipment right here. But,
these are dual use as bumper stickers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is
truly handcrafted.
Handcrafted, yes, sir.
Yeah.
So we'll apply the labels. Then the next process is to sanitize the bottle, then fill the bottle, and then cap the bottle, and then index the bottle into the case after that. Our first bottle run will be 1,400 cases, so basically it'll be about three times the amount that you see stacked up here. Okay. So Chris will be busy.
Yep.
Now, and this first run, is that all staying in the Coachella Valley, or?
No, this one, the first run is actually all going outside the Coachella Valley.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's going to Orange County, San Diego County, and Los Angeles County. We will have some at some select locations. You'll see it at Bristol Farms, LQ Wine, first and foremost, and Jensen's. The Bevmo will be one of the very first places to have it out here, and then Total Wine as well. So, okay. Yeah, it's exciting just to finally see it come full circle and be able to put some product into a bottle.
So, unfortunately, all of that's going outside of the valley. So, if one wants to in the Coachella Valley drink local, then they need to come to Coachella Valley Brewing Company.
Come down to the brewery, yeah. Like I said, there will be some select locations that'll get dosed up with a few cases off of this first run, but certainly won't be mass distributed in bottles probably till February. February we'll run another big bottle run and have enough to get out there and get out for you guys to try.
One last thing. This is kind of like your baby, so it's kind of like coming from beginning, and now you're seeing that fruition. Pete, I'm sure you can share with him the feelings of it's like giving birth. I mean, you've gone through this, and now all of a sudden,
Oh, yeah.
Do you see? Was this exactly with Ballast Point?
I can remember me doing this part, me cleaning the kegs on the kegging system.
They let you do this. So, nice job in the house.
They let me do this, yeah.
Welcome back. We just finished up the tour, and we're back in the tasting room at Coachella Valley Brewing Company. Joining us is one of the owners, David, and he's going to tell us about some of the ongoings here at the brewing company. Right, and then we're going to taste a Belgian Red, but before that, so David, a lot of action going on here. What kind of things are happening?
Yeah, it's been crazy since we've opened. Chris and I have just agreed to give up sleep or relationships with third parties or anyone else. So yeah, it's been great. We got a lot of stuff that's recently happened. We just did an event with Patrick Evans, the local meteorologist, and he has a side business where he sells and makes his own Italian sausage. And we just had an event with him where he came out here and cooked up food, and we paired it with the beers and then sold it as part of, we called it like Man's Christmas or something like that. We never actually gave it a formal name, but
I like that Man's Christmas. That sounds good.
Right. Well, so we packaged it all together with a growler and stuff like that, and that was very popular. That was this last Saturday.
Cigars too.
Cigars. Oh yeah. We also had a gentleman that I'm friends with. It's a cigar distributor that paired the beer with the sausage and the cigars. Again, all part of this Man's Christmas sort of thing.
Wow, that's very cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Really
We
good.
had a lot of people here. We had a whole cigar lounge out in the side over there. Going forward, we have every Tuesday we do something called Philanthropy Tuesday that my wife is in charge of, and she'll take a local charity, doesn't matter which one, anyone that has a 501c3, and we'll dedicate that entire day at the brewery to them, and so they can pack it in with as many people as they want, and it doesn't actually have to be people from their charity. It could be anyone that comes in randomly, and then we donate $1 back for every item sold to the charity. So it's been very popular. We've had that almost booked every Tuesday. Obviously the holidays kind of a little laxed on that right now, but going forward, any charity that wants to do charity or Philanthropy Tuesday just has to call and book it, and it's been very popular, and it supports local charities, which is always nice. Let's see. Every 2 weeks we do something here called Paint Night, and a lady comes in, and she's a local artist, and people pay her to be in her class, and she shows them how to paint something, and she'll pick something. So we did, my wife and I have a dog that's always here, Matilda, is an English bulldog, and so they use that dog, and she showed them how to paint the bulldog, and they do it, and they drink beers the entire time, and it's all done here in the tasting room. that's always something that's popular, and you can book that by going to www.paintnite.com. And there's always a group on for that.
That sounds
it's
fun.
pretty.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That
it's
sounds awesome.
it's super
Now,
fun.
and the painting gets better in the later part of the evening.
So you
after
got
we've had
easels
some
set up
drinks.
there,
Yeah,
and people
absolutely.
loosen up. All right.
There's
Right.
a lot of single gals too. So
Yeah,
for you guys
yeah,
out
exactly.
there that
There
are
you go.
looking to meet somebody,
Right.
there was a lot of single gals here.
Absolutely, and you don't even have to be semi-artistically inclined. So we'll take anyone. So that's been really popular, and
There's no test to get in.
no, not at all. No, you just got to pay. It's the best club to be in. So that next one is on January 11th, I think. My wife gave me a note here.
Sure.
Wrote it down. January 11th, and the next one's on the 30th. Just this is Palm Springs area is a vacation destination, so we've had a lot of success with people who are coming here to do vacation things. The best way I can explain it is that we have somebody that's a group of Canadians coming down for a bachelor party, and then they rented out the brew house for their bachelor party. So we've had that. Birthdays, people coming out here for birthdays now say, oh, well, we like beer. We like beer on our birthday. So then they've rented this place out. We've had a lot of success with those kind of things. That's always available.
Yeah, I think on your website it has even a tab for special events. So
Yeah, you just,
so who to contact for that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it just is a link to my wife's email address here. So
Okay.
she is our events director and deals with all booking that stuff. But yeah, it's a fun place if you're going to be out here in the desert and you're as good of a golfer as I am, which is not at all. But, I can drink beer better than I can golf, as is the case. for most.
Me too.
Right, I know. I saw your eyes light up. You're like, I'm not alone. So, so it's one of those kind of things that book an event here, and it's a fun place. And obviously, we have a lot of beer. We have a lot of great beer.
Sure,
So, yeah.
absolutely. Well, we're getting ready to taste the Belgian Red
Sure,
here.
cheers,
Yeah.
And
cheers.
while we're doing that, I might also mention it's easily accessible off the freeway. And then now the tasting room open. I know not on Mondays. Is that,
No,
but-
not unless you guys come. But it's Monday now. We are here now. So it's not open on Mondays. We are open on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 2 to 7. And then on Fridays and Saturdays, 1 till 9. And then on Sundays, it's 9:30 to 5:30. But if you're doing a special event, we just open it whenever you want. Yeah, it's kind of one of those things.
And the taps are open. I mean, you can.
No holds bar. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've had as many as 17, and we're trying to kind of keep ahead of the
Trying to keep
the
ahead
storm.
of
Yeah.
taps running dry.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been tricky. So.
Again, Lou, we've said this over and over today. A good problem to have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. It's been fun.
Yeah.
It's a fun ride.
For
Great.
sure.
Great.
Well,
So let's taste this beer.
Yep.
Sure.
All right. So this is it's a Belgian style, so I'm getting not a lot of fruitiness out of that yeast, but
This
maybe
is
a little spiciness.
It's the
there.
Trappist yeast, so yeah, I get kind of like a steely caramel note off the nose. 7 different malts. Definitely got some Caravienne in there.
Not high alcohol, which is something
No,
you
it's
kind of expect sometimes out of the
Sure.
Trappist. But
No, this
definitely
one we
not getting
wanted everything to kind of layer and the complexity to shine through. Some tart cherries from not too far away, and gives it a slight little tart finish on the
that.
back end.
A little almondy kind
Yeah.
of character coming
Yep.
out of the cherries.
For sure.
Yeah.
7 different kinds of malt.
7
Can
different
you name
malts.
them all?
I can. we use a Belgian Pilsner malt, Caravienne, Cara Munich, aromatic, biscuit, and there's one more, Special B.
Oh my gosh,
All
nice
right.
work.
Yep, that's pretty awesome.
and you said the cherries, which I can get that little bit of tart.
Yeah, the cherries mostly fermented out. So
Yeah, the cherries is subtle. It's not a real
no.
strong, but I think
I mean,
it's
it's a good-
almost coming
it's a-
across as a
we
little bit.
we
of
didn't want it to be a fruit beer.
Yeah, yeah.
It is a Belgian red. So and we do have some of this that's laying down on some bugs.
Okay.
That was the whole reason why we brewed it, is to kind of create a style much like a Rodenbach kind of
Yeah, I
kind
want
of
to
beer.
taste the
So.
soured version of this.
Yeah, you'll love it. It's
So
gonna be really
laying
nice.
down on
Excited, okay.
bugs.
Not literally.
Explain that because that's
That's
I'm
an
laying down on
extremely
bugs, I'm not
technical
sure
brewer's
that's
Term of
right.
art. Yeah.
yeah, I'm
Yeah,
good there. No, it's,
Bugs are kind of a slang term that brewers use to describe the fermentable bacteria that we use to make a sour beer. Bugs. The term came because it's an actual bacteria rather than a Saccharomyces strain, which is a yeast. So they're kind of non-discriminant. They gobble up everything and create kind of a bone-dry product, and the result is that they spew out a lot of sour character.
Well, it sounds like a lot of things are happening here, David.
Yes,
anything
sir.
else for the weekend, starting off the weekend?
Yes, on Friday we have Birkin Friday.
This is a family show, Mr.
I know, I understand. I was careful. I was very careful monitoring myself. Firkin Friday, and that's where we use an English-style cask. It's called a Firkin, right? Okay.
Correct.
Then we do a special beer in
Which
that
has a
and
bung
do
hole.
it. It
Does have
does.
a bung.
Good Lord. All right.
Oh my God!
And that gets tapped at 5 o'clock. Or
Yeah, 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. Okay. And
bung hole
it's
gets
three.
tapped?
The bung
Yeah,
gets
correct.
tapped.
It's
I'm going to take this south.
This is a G
you
show.
work for the school gym, sir. All right, and then it's $3 a pint for the pints for that. Now,
Not a pint, $3 a glass.
$3 a glass. Excuse me, a glass. Apologize. And I don't know what we're putting in it this week.
This week we have our Condition Black. It'll be the release of our Condition Black, which is our Imperial Cascadian Dark Ale, which is kind of like a porter or a stout married with an IPA.
Nice.
So real nice beer, super complex. This is a one-off cask we made with some Killer Bee honey. Re-fermented it with some Killer Bee honey, some Kohatu and summer hops from Australia, as well as some Oro Blanco and Persian lime zest inside of the cask. So yeah, it'd be
That's
really
kind of
cool.
tribute to up the hill,
Correct.
isn't it? To,
Yeah.
to the service people up.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay.
the Condition Black, Dave came up with the name, and it's basically described as a catastrophic breakdown in kind of mental capacity during training. So if somebody goes into Condition Black, typically it's heat exhaustion or
Firefight or something like
or
that.
mental breakdown or something like that. So we wanted to kind of pay tribute to that. And originally this beer was going to be released during Veterans Day, but again, with our production being so smashed, we couldn't jam it in for Veterans Day. But we got it now, and it's darn good. It's an 8%er, very hoppy, and very balanced. Probably like I said, the one beer that we make here that's kind of more like a Pacific Northwest style beer. Most of the beers we do are pretty West Coast. So
And if you're in Condition Black, it might help.
yeah,
Correct.
you might be in Condition Black if you're drinking $3 glasses.
Yeah, true.
Which, speaking of which, I was going to say with the $3 glasses is that in the tasting room here they range from $2.50 to about $3.50, $4. Very generous taste.
Some
that are
very
available.
cool stainless steel growlers if you want to take some beer to go.
Sure.
Yeah.
Very cool place here. So I'd say that we need to we're going to wrap this up. We would like to thank Dave and Chris for
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
allowing us to come in on their day off.
If you haven't been down here yet, get down here. Coachella Valley Brewing Company.
Cheers.
Paint night, Frickin' Friday.
Yeah.
Kate and I, freaking Friday.
Cheers.
Thanks, Pete Ahern, and I'm Jamin. We're signing off, and remember, drink responsibly, drink local.